And let's call ourselves into order. And we have Jim Jansen missing and Deanna McHugh. But starting over here, Jordan, just give your name so that everyone knows who to lay the blame on if they have any questions.
Jordan Shanks.
Mark Lenius.
Laura Freyking.
Linda Podasky.
Diana Blake.
Elaine Main.
Eric Leong.
Sarah Meyer Ryerson.
Nice stuff will be.
Okay, now they know. So, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda for October?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, and we need to check the minutes. And I did happen to see a little typo in there on the spelling of Brad Bierman's name, but do I have a motion to approve minutes from September?
Diane, I noticed we should list Sarah as absent, I suppose, but your name should be in there someplace up above.
Okay, and so we can just add that and correct Brad's name
And
spelling.
that was down in the reports, or
His name.
His name is right up
at
there.
the top.
It looks just like a typo. The computer does have a mind of its own.
Oh, I see.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second to approve?
I move we approve the September 13th minutes as corrected.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, let's get on to the financials for September. And we'll let Sarah and Denny take over.
Okay. Denny, you can jump in here whenever, but this is kind of a catch-up month for us because we've been getting on the same page and getting all of our spreadsheets updated, and we're now 1/4 of the way through the year. I think at the last library board meeting that I was absent from, you had asked for some more August information. So in your second email, you received August checks. In your first email, you received September checks. And on the large spreadsheet, the working budget expense spreadsheet that came in your second email, this is the one that you hadn't seen yet this year, which has the budget for 16-17, which that whole column for the 16-17 budget is highlighted in coral, so we don't forget what our budget is. And then at the very bottom of that column on the back side, I highlighted in yellow our bottom line budget number. So that's the number that we keep our eye on throughout the year, because if we have to exceed that number for some reason, a project comes up, we receive a gift and spending that puts us over, then we have to officially amend. But that's later in the year, closer to March. So you can see to the right of that coral column, you've got the first 3 months of this fiscal year then, July, August, and September. You'll notice that September is a high month for personnel costs, and the reason for that is that 2 months out of the year, because we're paid biweekly, there are 2 months out of the year where we have 3 pay periods, and September was one of those. And I did try to look through for some other anomalies that might bring up questions, and I think I noted some of those on the summary page. Which is also, I guess it's also in that second email, there was a expense summary page, which again, this is the first time you've seen this summary this fiscal year. So I noted at the bottom that we're 1/4 of the way through the fiscal year. There were 3 pay periods in September. We spent a lot in library materials in these first 3 months, which that is a group of line items that doesn't get spent evenly over throughout the year. And one reason for that is that some of them run on subscription, annual subscriptions. So I had a note for myself, it's at the library, on a little Post-it of all of the online subscriptions that we renewed in July and August, and there were about 7 of them. And so that was several $1,000s there. They're usually around $1,000 or a little less. And I was going to highlight some of those a little bit later in the meeting. So that brings the materials portion of the budget up quite a lot for those first few months to add that in. Also, I made a note that in August was when we paid popular subscription services for the lion's share of our print magazine renewals. We have that jobber that takes care of almost all of them, and I think that's a little more than $6,000. That should show up on your August checks list that we have. Also, on your September checks list, there was about $1,500 spent in travel and conference, and that has paid for the conference that the staff is going to this week. All of the librarians are going to Dubuque to the Iowa Library Association conference, which is a good point to mention for the public too, that the library will be closed this Thursday. We have signage out for that, and it should be on our website. Yes, if you look at your screen in front of you, the 13th of October, which is Thursday, the library is closed so that everyone can attend. There's multiple sessions that we will all have a chance to learn from that day. So
It's always interesting to read what the staff bring back. And
Yes.
New ideas, and that's just fun.
I'll make sure that everyone's remember that they'll write a report when we come back, and we can collate those. And
But we only have $200 left in travel and conference. Does that bother you?
well, the way that has always worked in the past, and I'd like to adjust it for next year, but the training, travel, and conference lines, which are right together there, let me find the numbers here, 6230 and 6240. Those have always been kind of used interchangeably over the years, but I think as time has gone by, we very rarely pay for training opportunities, what's categorized as that, because a lot of times that's over the internet and we don't have to pay travel expenses, and a lot of times in the library world those trainings are free. And so what I'd like to do for 16-17 as the Budget and Finance Committee continues to meet is to stack the travel and conference line heavier, and very little would actually have to be left in training. But I think there's kind of a fine line in how we've decided in the past how to categorize things. The other line that kind of goes with those is down below, line 6515 is fuel. And about the only thing we ever use that for is when our staff uses a city vehicle and goes to a conference like we will be doing this week, or when we are reimbursing staff for some of the outreach programs that they're going to every week. So that one relates to the travel and conference line as well. But that's a good question. So in answer to your question, no, I wouldn't be worried, because that $1,700 right above it, I think, would also be available for conferences and training.
So like daycare visits, does that fuel come out of that account, or
What's that?
like daycare visits?
Yes, that does. It's amazing when you go to 3 or 4 daycares every week, and after a quarter or 6 months, that adds up. So we do reimburse staff for their own vehicle expenses for those. It just wouldn't be practical for them to reserve a city car. It would be every day we'd be doing that. And if we were at the same location, we could, and that would be a more economical way to do it, but not as far as staff hours in making that happen.
Well, my question just is if we're reimbursing for that, it must not take much if 250 covers the year for fuel reimbursement.
Let's see. Maybe, now that you say that, that may have come out of the 6240 line out of travel.
Okay.
And that's another fine line. Maybe it should have been, I don't know, it probably
just
could go
curious.
either way. Yep. It must have, because that wouldn't all fit within $250.
Don't we pay for fuel for part of the fuel bill for Brad's truck?
That's what I was thinking. That was
I don't think we do. Maybe we should be, but I don't think we do right now. We split a lot of the other costs related. When Brad's truck needs new tires, we pay a quarter of it. Now that it's divided amongst 4 buildings, we split his cell phone costs, we split his salary and benefits package, but I don't think we've ever been asked to do fuel. If we are, I won't fight it.
If you were asked to present the dollar amount for the out-of-the-building visits for, daycares, seniors, whatever, that are like program visits, kind of, could you come up with that?
Oh, I certainly could come up with a number for you. Would you?
It'd just be interesting
Yeah.
to see. I'm thinking, when we were here at the council meeting a couple weeks ago, one of the council persons spoke about his wife having an in-home daycare.
Yes.
And how much she appreciated those visits. And I made me think, in case the council is curious about more detail, that might be a figure that one of them might ask.
And that we can easily get that because those checks are written directly to the staff members whose vehicles are being used.
And I'll put it together.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say, I know this is a pretty big range, but it's probably, if you add them, all the staff members together, which would be about 3 or 4 of them who visit regularly, it would be between $500 and $1,000. And that would be a good time to report, too, that now we are visiting 7 different preschools, so that's 42 programs a week for those, because some of them we visit multiple times during the week because it would be different groups of children depending on which days they go. Or in the case of Waverly Child Care, it would be different rooms. And then our home daycare visits have grown from 6 locations that we visit to 12 now. Or just over the past couple of years, that's...
And you visit them how often?
Most of the home daycares we visit once a week. Or no, excuse me. The preschools, I think, many of them are once a week. The home daycares are once a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, on this big spreadsheet, under minor equipment,
Mm-hmm.
there's a number for September in blue. It's 6504,
Yeah.
165, and I don't see a check for that, but maybe I just,
What did we talked about that one today, Denny? I'm trying to remember. Was that the one that
One of
was?
the minor equipment was a book cart,
oh, yeah, you said probably,
and the other one,
does that sound
I'm gonna have
right?
to see.
$560.
I know one thing that we had for minor equipment was a vacuum repair part.
Oh, yeah,
Although-
that was,
That can't be the whole. I might have to check on that one, Elaine.
Is that-
I think that's why I had put it in blue, so I could track it down.
Weber Supply.
I really appreciate the spreadsheets and stuff. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Who is Marco?
Marco is the
Equipment lease?
Yeah, that's our copy machine lease. And it is a newer company. We've just been working with them for the past few months. The city has a few machines through them as well, but
I had occasion to use it Monday, and it's simple,
yeah,
fast.
it's color copier that we have now, and I think it will do a lot more things. People have really been liking it that it's up close to the desk, because we often give people advice on how to run their items through, so that's been actually really handy. I know one other line I was going to point out was the office supplies line, 6506. In July, we had about $1,100 that we spent. That was on new library cards. We only buy those about once a year, but we buy 1,000 at a time, and actually 1,000 is about the number of new users we have every year. Yeah, and so that was the cost for those library cards. And then in August, we just put in an order for a variety of things: book jacket covers, some cases for audiovisual material. There were a number of office supply type things that were grouped all into one large order. So,
Under the checks, we've got 4 checks to the ICN.
That was my mistake, Ms. Blake.
You said-
The fourth one there, that's 226.72. I inadvertently typed Iowa Communications Network, and that should also be Marco.
Mark, okay.
And so there's 2 Marcos on there. And so we were behind a month on the copy machine.
I think it was the timing that the way we turn in our check requests. Denny helped me get caught up in August, and so some of our check requests, if they came at a certain date, they might actually get paid out in September, so they show up on the September's checks list. But if you look at under miscellaneous contracts, which is line 6499, there's a breakdown of all the different things that we pay for. This is on the big working budget spreadsheet. You'll notice under ISP, toward the bottom of that list, that's our internet service provider. That would be the Iowa Communications Network. We paid them once in July, and then there was no payment in August, and then we paid them twice in September. So that was the August and September payment.
I see that now.
So we haven't paid yet for the water feature at Wells Hollow.
We have, I just talked to Matt today, and I have sent off, probably 2/3 of the payment, and I also have, I talked to him about the fact that it's being paid out of multiple sources of private funds that we have in different accounts. And so I've made arrangements to have funds transferred from one of the foundation money market accounts into a checking account so that the final check can be cut to him. The CD, the garden CD that we were going to use from the foundation doesn't come due until the end of November. So it's just a pass-through there to make sure that he gets paid before the end of November. So he's got a good portion of it that he'll be receiving this week. Yes, yeah.
And he's happy with,
I think so. I spoke to his wife in the library the other day and told her how happy we were with it, and we had a lot of good comments on our Facebook post, and she had seen those and the photos, which I'll show towards the end of the presentation.
okay, everybody, are we about ready to wind up the financials? We have more questions.
The 2 to Eckers Flowers, I'm just curious there.
One of those were they on the September mark?
Yeah, so
One of those was that we ordered a small arrangement of flowers. I think that was the $12.50 for. We had library guests come for a meeting that was a performer showcase, which there were about 70 librarians that came and a bunch of children's program performers that came. And what was happening was librarians were kind of scouting for their summer reading programs. And so a lot of people in the building. One of the staff members said, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a few fresh flowers out with we had friends provided some treats. And so that's what one of those was. I may have to double check.
See, the other
Oh,
one's
thank
for
you.
grounds. Must have had a plant or two outside or something.
I was wondering, Denny just handed me the check request, thank you. There were 2 flats of zinnias there that were $66, and I think those were, you know what, they were planted earlier in the season, and that was a bill that we were catching up with Cindy. Those had actually been planted earlier in the season. So they were some of those. We don't plant many annuals in the gardens, but there are that butterfly wing section in the quadrant, we like to have a pop of color there, so that's about one of the only things we plant.
You'll be pleased to know that Roberta Maley came today and pulled up all my marigolds along the driveway, and she will break down the seed
Oh,
pods
good.
and put the seeds out now in the butterfly wing next spring. So they're trying to get away from as many plantings
Yeah.
as possible, but she can have my marigolds.
Usually those annuals are paid out of the foundation, and I think for some reason this time we just paid them out of the grounds operating budget. I probably should say a few words about the income too. This is the first time you've seen the revenue spreadsheet for this fiscal year. So we have not received a payment from the county contract yet, but I've been in contact. October is the month that we will. It's October and April that we get the 2 payments from the county. Right now I'm gathering the survey data from all of the county libraries where they say how much they circulated, how many items they circulated to Bremer County residents, how much they spent on library materials, because that all plays into the calculation of how we divide up the county contract. And the county contract for all 7 libraries together is about $181,000 right now, which we'll talk about coming up here too. Then I will put the distribution sheet together and make sure that that looks okay to all the county libraries, and then that goes to the county supervisor's office, to the finance director, and then she will cut the checks. So that's happening this month. We'll see the first one go in. Our fines and book charges money, that one looks, if you average it out, it looks very normal to me. I will say that in July, I did not make as many deposits as Denny helped me make in August, when again he kind of started doing that more regularly as part of, he was learning his job very well, and so he got me caught up. And so usually in fines and book charges, we take in somewhere between $900 and $1,000 a month, so we're about right on with that. Duplicating revenue, that one's a little bit lower than usual right now, but we're still kind of finding our way there. I wouldn't be too worried about that one.
Tax season to come around.
Yes, tax season is a big part of the duplicating, yeah. And, speaking of that, that includes money from the copy machine and money from printouts from any of the computers. And there really are a lot of folks who have internet connectivity at home, and even if they do, they may still come to the library to print out, just because printers are a little more labor intensive to keep running. And so that's where that duplicating revenue comes from. The transfers from the library reserve, there should have been a couple this year, yet Denny and I were talking today that that's one thing we're going to look back up on now. And then at the next meeting, we'll make a quarterly transfer to the city for the money that has gone out in checks that came from the reserve account. So that one has yet to be caught up.
Do I hear a motion to approve September financials?
there anything else you had, Denny?
I move that we approve the September financials per standing resolution.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we are now ready to discuss the county contract.
Well, I'll just say, in brief, what our annual process is here is that when the Bremer County Library Association, which consists of the 7 public libraries in Bremer County, when that group gets together in October, which would be a week from tonight, each library will be bringing a suggestion for a budget request from the county supervisors. Then those percentage increases or whatever they may be are taken and averaged. So that becomes the request that moves on to the county supervisors. So what we decide tonight will be taken to the meeting and will be averaged. So it won't necessarily end up being the request, but this is our voice in the request. And the material that I provided to you basically shows what the history has been for the last 10 or 12 years, what the actual budget has been. So this year in 2016-17, our contract, again, to be split amongst those 7 libraries is $181,000. I think I also included a sample of the distribution spreadsheet. This was for the distribution that was last year. Waverly's share in that, if you look kind of down towards the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that the total we received last year was $60,873. So again, depending on how the statistics come in that we're gathering right now, our payments this year will likely come out to be similar to that, but it always varies a little bit every year because we recalculate every year. The contract has remained the same since 14-15. And you can see the actual percentage increases there in the third column as compared to what the request amount was. There was a time when many of the county libraries were working hard to try to get the supervisors to come up to speed with the average per capita expenditure of the cities combined, and that explains kind of the high request amounts in the early years of this chart, and then of late last year, the Denver public librarian Kelly Platty came up with a very fine idea to take I think what would be the cost of living adjustment and then add in a set amount that would pay for a technology person whose sole duty would be to teach technology classes for the public, and that person would just move around to the different 7 libraries and teach classes. And so that was discussed at length last year. And in the end, it didn't work out that we received the money to do that program. But that was how we came up with 4.7% last year, is that I think when the BCLA group met, they decided on that.
Well, a thought has come to me as I knew we had come up with a figure tonight. We've had no increase in the last 2 years. And we've always presented to the supervisors that we would like to have county money step up a little bit to match what cities are paying, but that obviously has not gone over very well. But we do need a cost of doing business increase, because in the last 2 years, salaries and utilities and materials have increased. I think we ought to be realistic, perhaps, and present not so much this idea of you need to catch up with what the cities are doing, but let's catch up with there has been no increase and the cost of doing business has grown, and present that sort of thing. Be realistic to the fact we do have bills to pay in every library, and we need a little extra money for that. It wouldn't hurt to present the tech teacher idea either. I thought that was a fabulous idea. And it got shot down. But certainly, even if that wasn't connected to the total asking, we need a cost of doing business increase. Not so much a cost of living, but the fact that we actually provide a business and a service to the people of Bremer County.
And especially, cities sometimes get tight and feel they can't pay their share on for libraries, and if we still get 0%, then we're starting down the hole toward red, and that's not good business either. Is there any way to calculate the increase in costs due to serving non-city users? I don't know if there's any way to track that.
I mean, we certainly know, we can track the circulation, how many items go out to Bremer County residents, because we have that profile. There would be other things, other types of service outside of circulation that we wouldn't be able to track.
Well, if we even could, the libraries could show an increase in circulation to county users, that would, help support our cost of doing business.
I wonder if we could suggest at the county meeting that we have two proposals. One proposal would be a cost of living, cost of doing business increase. And then, that would be one figure, then add on the tech person and say, here are two proposals, but the tech idea didn't go over, but we would sure be happy to have an increase for materials and utilities, et cetera.
3 things struck me. First, Sarah, thank you for taking the lead and getting this all put together, because I know you queried the other libraries and kind of serve as the resource person for that, and that's appreciated a lot. And if that tech person idea, do you think that might have resonated after the supervisors thought about it? And would it be worth reintroducing that? I'd like to see that happen too. I think that would be a real strength for our libraries.
Yeah, I do think it resonated with them. They seemed very interested and asked a lot of questions. I don't know what the conversation was in the end, but they did come back to us with one question, which stumped me a little bit, because if you divided that amount up amongst the 7 libraries, it turned out to be well less than $1,000 per library. So we'd be talking about maybe, again, if you divided it down, maybe $700 or $800 per library that would be the benefit from that. Their question in the end, a couple of them, was if the county was chipping in that much, how much were the cities contributing to that program? So I didn't really know how to answer that question, given how we are set up, and the cities may not be, or at least in our case, the city may not be contributing directly to that program, but the city is largely, supporting the building and the staff, and
There's no line item that says that in people's budgets, but there is building, staff, utilities, et cetera, provided at a pretty high rate.
There are libraries, there are small libraries in the county for whom the county may pay a similar amount that the city does to run the library, and that's not the case here, obviously, because of the size of the community and the library. So for us, that's just a question I don't know how to put a number on, because the vast majority of our funding comes from the city general fund.
The other thing I wondered is, can we get a feeling for what the county budget looks like for the next year? And I found a document on the Iowa Department of Management, local government budget. And I don't know if I'm reading these things relevantly or not, but taxes levied on property for Bremer County would go up 2016-17, 2.85%, according to this. And then under expenses, county environment and education, I would suppose that's where libraries fall.
That's a good question.
That went up about half of 1%, 0.48 for next year. That's not very much.
Right.
Not when you look at mental health going up 125%.
Yeah, I think at the end of the process last year, that occurred to me as well, that we don't really know, I don't really have a good sense of where our portion, our $181,000 of the budget fits into the county's overall budget, and what other needs there are that we're competing with. I did ask, I believe I asked Cassandra Johansson, who is the finance director. She's the one I communicate with in the supervisor's office, and she's wonderful to work with, and she sent me some material that may be exactly what you have in front of you.
Take that if you
Sure.
go to the meeting next week, I don't know.
But that may be a good question for us to pose to the supervisors when we have our meeting with them in January, is to have them kind of explain to us where we sit and what other kinds of considerations they are having to go through when they think about our request, because I don't think we understand it well.
This is some insight.
Yeah.
I know we only have a week now before the county meeting, but, and James Browner has been a bit busy with flood, et cetera, but maybe you could just ask a few questions and go to that county meeting with a little bit of his background in mind, since he did work with supervisors in Black Hawk County.
Yes.
He may have answers to some of our questions. But do we have an idea yet what a cost of living increase is as far as the government's concerned?
I have not looked that up yet. I don't know. It may be available. I'm not sure.
I mean, I think the idea of Waverly Library going to that meeting next Tuesday and saying, we want a 7%, 10% increase, that's a waste of everyone's time and effort. We need to state clearly what we want and what the percentage is and why it's necessary in the light of no increases for 2 years and $1,000 a year before. Even back in the good old days of 2009 and 10, when the economy was falling apart, we were getting more money. And now things seem to be quite a bit more stable, and we're not getting any increases.
I know the state has thrown some expenses to the counties. The mental health would be one thing. So I'm sure that their picture has changed. I read something about the cost of living increase.
Was it 3 or just?
Something, it was
Looks like 1.7
1.7 is all?
is what they're showing here.
For this past year, this,
Yeah.
of 2016, yeah, I didn't think it was 3,
It said the 2015 increase was 1.7,
16.
third time overall for the past 7 years. So I'd say 1.7.
And the statement was, in what I read, that 1.7 was not what they used to consider if there's going to be a COLA for Social Security. So Social Security does not get an increase again this year.
There's always discussion about whether the items used in
The red basket.
the configuring the cost of living are actually accurate to the way people get their money and spend their money. But that's a constant discussion.
So I apologize for the semi-loaded question I'm going to ask. This is my first time with this go-around of increasing or keeping the same budgets. What are the reasons why we haven't had an increase in budget for the last 3 years?
The reasons why we have not?
Yeah.
I don't know that we know.
They just vote us
don't.
down.
Yeah, the process is that we come up with a request. The librarians get together and put that request into a packet with an annual report for the supervisors. They receive that request in December. They set up a meeting with us in January, so all the librarians and whatever trustees can attend go meet with the supervisors in January and kind of make our case, give our reports for what kinds of things we're doing, and then we hear back later in the spring what the amount is. So we don't have another conversation with them until the next year. But I don't know that we know why it is one way or the other.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we going to tell Jordan to do?
Well, I'd like to
Get some
bring
money.
it back to Diane's point of, maybe attaching it to the cost of business, because I think it's an opportunity to advocate on what, libraries are spending their money on, and that these budgets aren't static for the library. Cost of living, sure, whatever, but I think if you can say, subscriptions, databases, the utilities.
Books.
Yeah, the books prices going up. I think that's just an opportunity to advocate.
Personal increases.
Maybe
And
we-
that 0% is actually, a cut to the budget.
It is.
Because we can't do anything more with that budget.
Maybe we can look at what the percentage of subscriptions and book budgets and salaries, what is that percentage has gone up for the last couple of years, and use that as our request and say that is absolutely necessary, but this whole tech idea would be wonderful to fund for everyone in the county, but we can't even consider, as individual libraries, increasing services if we don't get some kind of cost of doing business.
Do you think that some of the smaller libraries would have some ammunition for wanting to continue to ask for that tech person? Do you think they're strongly in favor of that, or was that just a nice idea?
Well, I think the idea came because the Denver Public Library has been able to have a very successful program with that. I don't know how they've been handling that in their budget, but they've had the budget to hire a tech person, and I think they draw people wanting to take that class from all over the county, even from Waverly area.
Tempting, the class.
Yes, and it's on various basic topics. They have a great teacher that they've lined up who also works at the Waterloo Public Library. And, if we could get that teacher, great. who knows if we'll be able to have the same teacher or not. But I think, yes, many of the smaller libraries in the county would not have the budget to pay a teacher like that. And so this may be the only way that they could bring technology classes to their community.
Do they have ways of saying how strongly they'd like to have that? That's kind of what we need.
Yeah, we could.
Do they charge a fee for the classes at all?
I can't remember how Denver does it. If they charge a small fee.
That's a question that might come up.
Usually all programs in libraries are free, but I'll have to ask.
Okay. We have talked this to death, and actually what we're doing is trying to figure out what we're going to do. So it's now time to figure out, what are we going to ask for?
Well, the 4.7% that was asked last year,
Didn't we ask 3% last year, and then they asked higher, and our average was 4.7?
And we got the same
Well,
results.
Yeah.
Zip.
It was interesting because it was the trustees who were, another reminder that in the Bremer County Library Association, the only folks who can vote are trustees. And so in discussing it at the October BCLA meeting last year, I think even though it was a non-traditional route, the trustees ended up deciding to go with calculating it differently, based on, a whole different approach. So part of me says that the 4.7% didn't come out of averaging last year.
It's the least amount that the group has presented to the supervisors in this time
Yes.
period you've got on the chart.
Well, if we're thinking strategically, looking at history, it looks like when we go low, we don't get anything, but when we go high, we get something. So maybe we go high and get something and let them, instead of going low and getting nothing.
I think we have to be straightforward about the increased costs that we're experiencing. And they may want to know, well, how much of this is county people and how much of it is city people, and we'll have to have an answer for that. But it seems to me that we've gone a number of years with, a lot of years with less than 5%. And I think it's time we need to, I don't know if it's make a stronger case or see how the county is standing, but I think it is time to realistically base ours on the costs that we're experiencing. And I
just pulled out this sheet from last year, the 2015-16 request, and the requests from the libraries that attended were 6, 8, 8, 10, and Waverly 3.
we better get up with the rest of them then.
Yeah, and I would say.
We pulled it down for them.
Yeah, and along with what Jordan's saying, I think maybe
Yeah.
bump it up because we've had 2 consecutive years of 0, so there's, a deficit to make up.
Okay, somebody propose.
Jordan, what would you be comfortable with?
No pressure. No pressure.
I would
Aim
propose
high.
10.
I'll second that. Give me a second.
Okay, we have a proposal and a second. All in favor of 10%, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Go for it then. But I think we need to stress cost of doing business. And
Can we
actually,
see those numbers?
it costs just as much to keep a county person warm and being able to
Yes.
see thing in the
Yeah.
library as it does a city person.
Right.
So it's not like if somebody from the county comes in, we turn the thermostat down.
Right. They're just like city people.
Yeah, they're using the
And
facilities.
we figure out a per capita.
We need
and
to have
that's how it
some
works out.
support in those increased costs. I think we're remiss in our duties to our taxpayers if we don't. remind
That's right. This is our
everybody
job.
that this is a responsibility for everybody. Okay, are we ready to move on to special projects? And I will say that the Special Projects Committee met, and Laura's on that committee. And, let me see, and we have several others there, but we had 3 special projects come in, and we passed nothing for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't have any money in the budget right now because earlier in the year, and special projects runs on a calendar year, not a fiscal year, the group, with the approval of the library board, had decided to spend a good portion of the budget on the water feature, and that was fine. Everyone was happy with that. We also had our book repair machine. So as we were sitting here looking at 3 proposals, we were looking at a bottom line available to us of $367.70, and that wasn't going to pay for any of these. And we had a variety of questions to ask, not just about money, but whether we, on this one particular one, and all the projects were worthwhile, one working for inclusion, getting as many people into the library as possible, regardless of what disability or what physical concerns they might have. We were concerned about the $900 cost. We had some concern about, was it an ongoing cost? And we also wondered if we could use some city, is there already city training in the inclusion area that library could get a hold of? Can we work through our HR person that we often consult? So these were questions that we gave Jillian, and she noted it and took it down. So we weren't particularly ready to take on an ongoing, every year type of cost as a special project, but she was going to come back. Another project totally worthy is our lit kit bags, where they're stocked with all kinds of puzzles, games, books, DVDs and stuff, and some of the bags are falling apart and the items inside are obsolete. One example given was we're still using cassette tapes instead of CDs. So the request was well-founded, but the cost was $800. So we asked Jillian to have the person submitting the request come back and with a variety of questions. Can we use some of the bags? Are they still usable? Can we get by with fewer kits? Do we get any support from this from Friends? And we did have our Friends representative there who said she would take that to Friends meeting. So it wasn't we didn't like these ideas, we just didn't have the money for it. And the third one was the replacement of the kitchen play set. And we had some questions about not necessarily the cost of it, but where do we get it? If we have the unit itself, then we thought shipping was rather high priced on that. Is that another thing Friends would be interested in helping to fund? And not only is the kitchen play set itself in sort of well-used condition, but the items that go with it, the dishes, the little forks, all those need to be considered. So we just didn't have enough information or a way to get a final money price to pass anything.
So Diana, the inclusion one, was that a workshop?
No,
Or
well,
is that
it's a-
facilities to allow people to get in the library?
Well, it could be anything.
It's actually, what you're paying for is consulting
Yeah.
from,
Okay.
from a nonprofit that would consult with you throughout the year.
And here, you can look at this if you want, but we just didn't have enough information, and it wasn't that we thought any of these were projects that shouldn't be funded, but if we do fund it, we're going to have to fund it in this calendar year, we're going to have to find more money from someplace else.
One comment, and I know I wasn't at that meeting, but one comment is that in past years, sometimes we haven't had very many proposals for special projects, so we have left money, considering that every year I think we've had a budget of $4,000 to spend from these foundation funds on these special projects. There have been a number of years, and I could look up, where we have left $1,000 or $2,000 unspent. And it seems to me that one of the foundation board members made a comment at one of the last meetings, and he was right, that if the library board decided to make an exception to that $4,000 budget, because those are custodial funds and technically under the control of this board, they could do that. And this may be the year that, since we have these proposals, that could be done, and we could spend more than $4,000 this year.
Question on the kitchen set. Might the library consider accepting a kitchen set from someone whose children are grown and gone, or whatever, a set that's not as used as ours is? I don't know if there is such a thing around, but
Well, these are for public buildings, not just for the home
okay.
consumption kid.
Okay.
Probably, unless they're built
Tougher.
unless they're built to public usage standards, they might not survive. And this one is well-used, and kids like it, so we want to get one that lasts and isn't destroyed in 6 weeks.
and there's to get it from this particular source is going to cost
Well, yeah,
$2
and that's
for shipping.
That's why we did not have enough answers to the questions we had, and therefore, information will come back to us, and then we'll do another special projects, and we may be back to you by next month. But we still have, let's see, one more request period for special projects in this calendar year, and that would be in December. So that's the report from special projects. Okay. Policies and personnel. You have a
Yes.
policy for us,
We
Elaine?
met. We are working on a slight change to the behavior policy, and it should go back to the committee first before we work on it.
And everyone does have that in their packet, do they not?
Yes, very good minutes. You can see what it's going to be about.
Do you have any more to report on it, or do you want any
Why don't we
feedback?
just wait?
Is it number 11?
Then you can look at the whole bag at once.
Okay,
Yeah, number 11 was the change.
yeah. So everyone needs to just be aware, look it over. If you've got information, concerns, interests, personnel and policies is Eric, Elaine, and Jim Jansen. And he'll be back in order to finish up. So-
We're to meet 1st of November. So
Good.
back
Yeah.
by the November meeting.
So you'll have this to go on the agenda in November. Okay. And so let's move on then to reports, Sarah.
So I think the first one, there was just a report that the Budget and Finance Committee has met. And we've kind of started to get our minds around what the factors might be as we're considering a budget request to the city for 17-18. The next meeting is Wednesday, November 2nd at noon. And that meeting, of course, is open to anyone, and will be at the library in the conference room that day. So,
And just a reminder that during these budget and finance meetings, that's when we go through the minutia of every single line item and every single consideration. When the final budget comes to the board in December, we will not go through all the minutia. So if you are interested in those little details. You're welcome to come to Budget and Finance, but we will present more of a general idea and not retrace our steps so that those meetings that we did spend all that time in become redundant. Did I say that without irritating anybody?
We got the message.
Thank you.
Don't ask questions.
Okay, water feature.
All right, I was just going to show a few photos here. So let's see, I think if you
Mine died.
switch the dial to your right,
E. How come, oh, there we go. Okay.
do you see a photo of the library with a close-up of the water?
Yep.
I just wanted to show a couple of photos of the water feature and say again, thank you to all of the donors who contributed to this project. We had several. And we also collected, I think the total was about $500 that we collected from those boxes that we put out in the library, which was very, very nice that the public chipped in like that. So all of the money used to pay for this is from the foundation, from private gifts that we had in Library Reserve, from new gifts that came in specifically for this project. Wells Hollow did the project for us. They made us a design that was based on very closely on the original design of the gardens, which kept the 4 quadrants in the butterfly life cycle. So we have 3 streams coming into a central pond. Because of the way the water is recycled in this system, we found out it would be more efficient if we widened our pond a bit. So that's one difference. But otherwise, the streams that come in are beautiful. They have a nice fall to them, which gives a little added sound, water sound, which is really nice. So if you haven't seen it, come out and take a look. I'm just going to show you a couple of photos that I had posted on Facebook when it was finished. So this one is looking to the north, so we're looking at the stream that is on the western edge.
Beautiful color. Love the blues.
And this one is the stream that flows in from the south there. So the building behind, you can see Waverly Child Care and Preschool. You can see one of the sculptures that is Chris Wubina sculpture there, the leaf. And then that's taken from the northernmost stream there. But the structure of the rocks is really nice because he's used some pretty large boulders on the edges so that it's pretty sturdy, and it just looks really, really nice. And I think the timing of it is great because Roberta, our gardener, will have time to, she moved a number of things to get ready for this project just to salvage what we could. And we had plenty of hosta, so we're kind of spreading our hosta around in that area. But she is able to get a start now on what will be coming up in the spring. So I think next season. Yes, Roberta Maley. I may have mentioned this before, but we call her Saint Maley because she's always out in the gardens. So those are the photos I had to show.
Beautiful.
Yep. Okay.
Let's see.
15-16 annual report presentation.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if do you just have 2 stations on your
A and B.
A and B? I wonder what happens. Hang on one second. Let's you see any,
No.
Not at the moment. Color is adjusting,
oh,
it said.
well, for some reason, the document overhead is not working for me, but as far as showing it, sharing it with you. So I just have a quick kind of summary of our annual report. Part of this was shared with the City Council a couple weeks ago. Presentation. Diana, you can chime in with anything from that presentation as we go along here, but I did give them a packet, at least with some visuals at that meeting, and I might have one extra one here for those of you who were not at that meeting. But I had our mission statement on the front. This is kind of a review of some of our accomplishments from 15-16. And the highlights. So one of the highlights was that our youth staff started a new program called 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And there's an acronym for that I always have to think really hard about. It's 1K, B4K. But 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And we have, I wish I knew the current number of children that we have signed up for that right now. But the idea is to encourage as much reading with your child, with your young child, as possible. There are statistics that show how beneficial that is in preparing a child to go into school, is when they have that background of experiences they get from books. And a lot of times when we read books, we see unusual words that we might not see in everyday conversation or experience. It's just a way to experience new things. And so when that child comes into kindergarten, having had those experiences and at least some context where they've used that vocabulary before, it helps those lights come on a little bit faster when they're learning to read and trying to connect things. We have had a couple of little kiddos already that have completed the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, so we gave them more logs, so hopefully they're starting on their next 1,000 now. And also just that it's very much okay it is so beneficial for the kids, for the parents to read to them, read together. It's not just, I don't think parents have to be concerned about teaching their child to read before kindergarten, because all of that will come. The whole idea is just giving them the vocabulary and the experiences. I just helped a little girl the other day when I was at the front desk on a weekend, and she had come in and they have flowers set up over in the youth department where every 100 books in that 1,000, the child can come in and get a little prize, kind of like the summer reading program incentives, where they get a little prize and then they get to put their sticker on that flower. And so she was very excited. And I've been told by one of the kindergarten teachers in the Waverly Shell Rock system that she is wholeheartedly believes in those little incentives. And so for whatever reason, the kids just get really excited about the stickers or the bouncy balls or whatever little thing, bookmarks that we have for them when they've reached a milestone. So I already mentioned the outreach, that we have been expanding our outreach so that we are traveling to more preschools and more home daycares now. We hope that continues to grow. We're trying to find ways to make our staff even more efficient so that we can have more librarians doing outreach of this type for early literacy and for outreach to other populations, homebound, and other communities in Waverly. We are trying to help all of our staff who go out to visit the younger set to be aware that we are trying to also help teach and encourage the caregivers to do what is set out in the Every Child Ready to Read curriculum, which is sing to your child, talk to your child, write with your child, play with your child, read to your child. That all of those things are beneficial, and that, just the act of talking about your day as you go through it, everything you do, just putting words to that when you're around those little people, again, just puts more words in their vocabulary, more experiences. I remember a workshop I went to on that out in Indianapolis, actually, a couple years ago, and one of the presenters said, people don't realize how valuable it is for you just to lay on the ground with your child and watch the ants run around and talk about what they're doing, and just simple things like that. You don't even need to have a book in your hand. It can be just anything that you're observing around you. So we try to help all of our staff be prepared to get a little plug-in for those things, with any of the caregivers that they have contact with. We had great success last year with the Battle of the Books program that we helped out with at Waverly Shellrock. I think this year we may be helping with the high school team, and the middle school teams will be taken care of by their librarians at the school. But this is a program set up by the AEAs in Iowa, and they basically come out with a long list of books for that age group. So if we're talking about the middle school set, it would be that age group. The high school has a different list of books to read. I think they even have a program for the elementary kids now. But the kids read as a group. So if there are 6 of them or 10 of them in their team, amongst all of them, the idea is to try to have someone who's read together collectively, they've read all the books on the list. So that when they go into this competition and they're asked questions about the books, someone on the team potentially knows the answer. So they placed in the competition down at Marshalltown last year and had a very good time. And this was kind of a add-on to our teen programming, which worked out really well. A very enthusiastic group of kids that met throughout the year to talk about the books, and it was great. And some of our ongoing programs, we had another great year of do-it-yourself. We added a photography group. Stacy Learhoff is one of the staff members who leads that up, and they've got a really great group of core group of photographers that come once a month to just talk about what they're doing, talk about their equipment, talk about different lighting, different kinds of photography. So we would encourage anyone who wants to learn something about their camera, or don't even have to have a camera to come. But they're a great group, and they're looking for speakers as well. So I think next month when they meet, they're going to be having a speaker, another photographer, to talk about their work. In addition to that, I think Chris Fagery, one of our librarians, did a very fine job of bringing authors. So again, we're talking the 2015-16 year. That was the year that Chris brought Jan Brett to Waverly, which was a huge, huge accomplishment. She's a world-renowned children's author and illustrator, and that drew a great crowd. We ended up having it at the middle school because it was I think there were 400 or 500 people that came. She signed books. It was just a really great event. Chris also got the author of the All Iowa Reads book last year to do a Skype with our reading group. So that was really fun. It seems that people are very interested in coming to book discussions, especially if they know the author will be there to ask questions. And in this case, even though it was via Skype, we still had a really great turnout. So we're going to keep trying to do that with the All Iowa Reads books. And then digitizing. This is just an ongoing project, but I'm so impressed with the work that Jillian Rutledge, another one of our librarians, has been doing, because she's been continuing to work, pick away at this project where we're digitizing all of the historic newspapers that we have, and I think we're up to 1914, 1915, and just ready to authorize another round of digitizing there. She's also organizing us, and she's got the new scanner in place to start digitizing the historical photos. So 2 different projects there that are coming along, and she's a very disciplined person who sets aside time to work on it every week, and I have no doubt that we will get there. So that's very exciting. And I've heard from a number of people from out of state who have roots in Bremer County and Waverly about how thankful they are that the Waverly newspapers and the Bremer County Independent from way back are digitized, because then they can do their searching from wherever. And they may still make a trip here, in the summer to do some more in-depth research, but that way they can do all kinds of research. In fact, it helped, having those newspapers digitized helped our historian who was working on the historic districts as well do some of her research from afar. So those have all been really great projects. I think the only other thing that I wanted to show, while you have your computer screens up and turned to, you may have to flip back to view the library's webpage. And I just want to show you a couple of new online databases that we have. Okay. So are you seeing where it says online resources?
No.
Did you flip your
Yeah.
dial back?
Resources.
Well, since I don't have glasses.
Online research.
You can flip it back to B, or switch to B also, and that will let her guide you.
Oh, up. This is down, this is up. I should be able to see.
So just in brief, I would just encourage people on our website, which you can get to by going to waverlya.com, which is the city's website, and then on the drop-down menu that has departments, you can go to the library. On the library's website, there's a resources tab, and then online resources. You can just scroll down that list and look at some of the new things that we've added. This A to Z USA is one that's used by students, especially middle school students in research. It talks about the state, all the information about the different states in the United States. And a companion to that database is the one below it, Global Road Warrior, which does the same thing for countries. So, but this is also great if you're traveling to a different country, and we still have print books on these things, but this information is possibly even more up to date on a given country. So it'd just be another source to look to information for. Learning Express is a database that we've had for a while through the state library. And I just sent my daughter a link to this one the other day because it has ACT prep tests as one of the many things that it offers on Learning Express. There's also GED information and other kinds of tutorials for things that you might want to learn. Ancestry is a new one that we have just subscribed to. This is a genealogy database where you can learn about your family history. The subscription that we get as a library is different than a subscription you could get as an individual, but it still covers quite a lot of ground, I understand. So that will be nice for a lot of folks who don't want to splurge for the individual subscription. The others may be ones that we've had for a longer period of time, but again, I would just encourage you to scroll through them. We have a couple of sources there for free downloadable ebooks and downloadable audiobooks. If you have any questions about that, just check with the librarians. And as a last, I guess I should say a few words about these statistics. Did someone have a question? Okay, I thought I heard something. I gave you a sheet, just a quick sheet that I had printed out before I left the library. We're just gathering information now. Again, this is data from the 15-16 fiscal year. Every year we have to report this to the state library, and I think this year the survey to the state library, which they share at the national level, it's due to the state in November, I think by the end of November. So you can just, this looks at the last 3 years, and you can just see that our library visits have popped back up. We had a little bit lower year last year. Part of that was that we were closed for a couple of weeks for recarpeting and rearranging. I'm sure there's a number of factors. Sometimes the weather is a big factor. If it's a rough winter, that kind of thing. So there's always some up and down to these numbers, but many of them, like library visits, have hovered around the same numbers for a while. So we're at 137,445 visitors last year. The total library programs, the number of programs that we provided to children, which would include everything in-house and the outreach programs, is up to 723 programs now. And the total attendance at those programs is well over 27,000, pushing 28,000. You can look down that our wireless use is up again to 24,000 uses. I think our wireless, when you log in, it gives you 4 hours, and then if you're on longer than that, you have to log in again. But it's an open system. But that's interesting that has gone up again, and I think, in addition to that, I think our bandwidth will just keep growing. The amount we'll need. Larry's going to check into that and just check in on how we're doing on bandwidth. Otherwise, you can see a few of our circulation numbers. The one thing that's missing, that's kind of a key component to what we do here, is our online checkout numbers or online uses, which actually we're told specifically for the Gale Virtual Reference Library, that online resource, I think our vendor is just amazed at how much use ours is getting. Those numbers are still being collected, and I'll share with you when they come in. So that's what I've got for a report for you.
Okay. And a reminder to everybody, the library is closed Thursday for Iowa Library Association meeting. Anyone got any more questions, comments?
Anybody wants to come Wednesday afternoon on the out-of-school time, we've got a number of librarians gone, and I shall be there riding herd on the Cowboys and Indians, so come and join me.
Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and thank you.